Support for Artists grant. And yeah, we'll just each take turns kind of talking through these slides, talking about this program, the Support for Artists, kind of basic overview, and we'll dig into more of the specifics. These are grant funds that are originating from the American Rescue Plan Act and then are being distributed through the City of Pittsburgh. And Casey Droege Cultural Productions has been brought on board, in partnership with the city to distribute and facilitate that process. And this is all sort of with the purpose of supporting Pittsburgh's creative community and creative sectors, broadly speaking, after sort of the impact and the disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic. So Patrick, I'll pass it off to you to share a little bit more about the background of this grant.
Sure, thanks. So if you have not heard by now, the American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law in 2021 by President Biden in response to COVID-19 and how it really had detrimental impacts on Americans across the nation, and anyone living within the world, really. It was a $1.9 trillion stimulus bill. And of that, there were a lot of different programs and different opportunities. The one that directly impacts us, the city of Pittsburgh, as a local government, was the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Program. It has the very great acronym of SLFRF, which doesn't sound great at all, but the funds are great. And it's managed by the U.S. Department of Treasury, and that's $300 billion to state, territorial, local, and tribal governments to support the response to and recovery from the public health emergency. So of that, the city of Pittsburgh received $335 million in direct support based on our size and population, on record with the federal government. Allegheny County received its own allocation. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania received its own allocation, and et cetera. So then honing in a little bit more, what did we do with that $335 million? So in 2021, Mayor Peduto and City Council passed the first allocation. A good chunk of the money went towards supporting government operations to make sure that city services could continue for residents as scheduled without any interruption, given that a lot of our revenue sources from the city were severely impacted by COVID. So a good chunk went towards just maintaining those services. We did allocate some internal funds for capital projects, parks, roads, streets, lights, bridges. Those projects take a long time to plan, and you've probably started to see some of those moving into fruition now. A lot of housing projects, partnering with the Urban Redevelopment Authority. We have spent millions of dollars to help first-time homeowners to make and maintain affordable housing, to help small businesses, to basically do a lot of things that a one-time influx of cash really could do to help people who were impacted by COVID. We've also done lead line projects for drinking water lines with Pittsburgh Water and a lot more. Now, since then, through the transition administrations, Mayor Gainey and City Council have amended the plan multiple times. We're kind of on our 9th major iteration, and that's really to better meet the changing needs of Pittsburgh residents. It's also to align with the ever-changing rules that the U.S. Department of Treasury set. A lot of things kind of came along while we were in the planning process or while we were moving through program creation. So sometimes we had to kind of stop what we were doing and reconsider and rethink it. Things kind of settled by the end of last year. We did have to obligate, meaning contract, all of the funds by the end of 2024. So the lines that exist now are the lines that will remain in play until the end of the ARPA program at the end of 2026. So what are we doing to support the arts? Our final allocation had over $2 million in funding to support arts and artists and the local creative economy within the city of Pittsburgh. So there are a few things that we are doing. One is economic support for artists, and that's this opportunity. Another major one is support for arts programming. And what we did to kind of come up with these two things is we took in a lot of feedback from arts groups and arts collaboratives, and the breakdown was really we want both, right? We want some direct support for what we had to go through as our economic impact, but also it would be nice to just have some support for new initiatives, new curation, new works themselves. So we split up some of the funds across those two opportunities. We did do full RFPs. So for the economic support for artists, we put out a call for companies and agencies to help us. The City of Pittsburgh put out economic support to the artists directly. That's where Casey Droege Cultural Productions gets involved. They were the winning recipient of that RFP. And then we also had an open call for some structured arts programs. And that RFP went through council approval and contracting last year as well. So other items include support for Juneteenth celebrations in 2023 and 2024. The city purchased a new mobile stage for some of our internal programming, and that also allows the existing stage to kind of be used for community events and community arts and music performances. We did some internal support with special events programming, and then we also did some internal support for city planning's public arts program. So that's what we're doing with our $2 million in funding for the arts. And, we're really excited about all these opportunities. Like I said, some of it did take a little bit longer to actually figure out what we could or could not do, and how to build the programs and get us to the point where we are now. So thank you for your patience with all of that. And then I will pass it back on over.
Yeah. So as you can kind of tell, this is a team effort, again, between the city, who's the one with these funds and with this opportunity to support very directly the artists of the city of Pittsburgh. But then we are come in as this more administrative facilitator position. A lot of our work is about supporting arts organizations or artists and different program opportunities in the city. We do that in a myriad of ways, so this just naturally fits with what we are doing, especially as we are very keen to support a stronger, healthier arts economy for all of us. So we will be kind of front of line. You can email info@caseydroege.com if you have any questions throughout this process, but we'll continue to tell you now about how this is going to happen. So just as basic overview of the grant, and then I'll pass it off to Rhoda to tell you a little bit more about who is eligible. This would be awarding a one-time grant to 75 different artists. So we've taken the full sum of $125,000 that can be distributed and split that up into 25 grants per tier across 3 tiers. So $500, $1,500, $3,000. You can submit your application with being considered for any of those, 1, 2, or 3 of those options, but you will only receive one grant if selected. So I'll let Rhoda tell you a little bit more about how to apply.
Thanks, Hannah. So in this section, we'll go more into depth about the application, starting with eligibility. Applicants must meet all of the following eligibility points to be considered for the grant. Number 1, you must be a resident within the City of Pittsburgh municipal boundary. We'll go more into detail about this on the next slide. Number 2, you must be at least 22 years of age or at least 18 years of age as of March 3rd, 2021. 3, you must be able to demonstrate a COVID-19 pandemic-related disruption to income as of March 3rd, 2021 or later. And 4, you must be able to demonstrate having a creative practice active before and after March 3rd, 2021. So for all of these eligibility points, we'll be asking applicants to upload proof, and we'll go more into depth about the types of documentation we'll accept as proof later in this presentation. And the examples will also be listed on the website application form itself. So, okay, next slide. All right, so more about Pittsburgh residency. As we mentioned, the applicants must live within the city's boundaries, pictured here. The surrounding boroughs are not eligible, and on the application page, we've linked a map that includes a little search feature that will allow you to enter your address and check your residency. And as we mentioned, we will require proof of your current residency in the form of any of these types of documentation you see listed here. Again, applicants must be able to demonstrate having a creative practice active before or after March 3rd, 2021. This just helps us confirm that your work was ongoing and affected during that time. And your art practice can be in any of the following areas listed here. And the program focuses on specific types of artists to ensure that funding reaches those most aligned with the goals of our grant. Okay, so if an artist meets all of the eligibility points we just discussed, priority will then be given to artists who meet any of the following priority points. So artists who meet the priority points will get extra entries. It's one additional entry per point. We ask that you note that priority points do not guarantee funding, and it also doesn't include otherwise eligible applicants from being considered. And the priority points are as follows. Artists who did not receive any emergency grant funds from any local arts foundations during the COVID-19 pandemic. The federal stimulus checks do not count. Artists whose household income is at or below the federal poverty level. And 3, artists whose creative practice is the sole income for the household. All right, Patrick.
Yeah, so if you couldn't tell, a lot of the stipulations and guidelines for this program really relate back to what the federal government says we can and cannot do. So what is not covered, these really are things that are explicitly called out in the American Rescue Plan legislation as things that cannot be funded, and we just want to make sure we're clear with that. Damages covered by insurance, expenses that have been or will be reimbursed under any other federal programs or other sources, contributions to rainy day funds, financial reserves, or similar funds. That is very much for governments. So are the next few ones: payment of interest on or principal of outstanding debt instruments, satisfaction of any obligation arising under or pursuant to a settlement agreement, judgment, consent decree, or judicially confirmed debt restructuring, deposits into any pension funds, expenditures, and then this one is, really related to the city. I don't anticipate this coming up, but expenditures not in compliance with any other limitations or requirements that have been or will be established by the city, applicable law, regulation, or ARPA guidance. And then this also should not be relevant here, but the federal guidelines say we cannot reimburse expenses paid prior to March 3rd, 2021. That March 3rd date is really when they have flagged the mark of eligibility for all ARPA-related purchases.
And so then the last portion of this presentation, before we kind of open it up for any questions, is just going over the process. So the application form is live. If you haven't already stumbled upon it, this is the link to it. So again, it's on caseydroege.com's website. The deadline for this is the bitter end of the day, 11:59 p.m. on June 16th. We will then move this into a review stage. So we will be working with a review committee made up of some city representatives as well as some local creative stakeholders to do sort of an objective analysis of the applications. Again, this is to basically first confirm the eligibility points that Rhoda pointed out. You must, check the boxes for all 4 of those eligibility points to just make it through the review round. And then they will also confirm whether there are any priority points on your application as well to be taken into account. So following that review, we will then enter all of the eligible applications into a lottery system. As Rhoda said, if you have any of those priority points, your application will earn an additional entry. So if you're eligible, you'll have at least 1 entry into the lottery system, but you could have as much as 4 entries into the lottery system if you have those 3 priority points as well. From there, the names will be pulled at random per those 3 tiers. So we'll pull 25 names for the 3,000, 25 names for the 1,500, and 25 names for the $500 grant tier. And again, if you're selected for one of those, your name will be removed from the lottery selection process for the following tiers. Once that all happens, we will notify all of the selected grantees by September 1st, 2025 at the latest. And we'll then follow up with an artist agreement to sign, just kind of stipulating the process of distributing and receiving the checks. And in W-9, all grantee recipients are responsible for their own sort of tax implications that are associated with the award. Again, that could be different per the different monetary levels. And our hope is to get everything kind of paid out and wrapped up definitely before the end of the year, but most likely in the October, maybe early November at the latest range. What's next? If you haven't already looked through the application form, and I'm happy to switch my screen over and we can scroll through it if that's helpful to anyone. But this is basically what to expect and maybe prepare for. There's basically 5 categories of questions, a number of questions just on your general personal information, name, phone number, address, those things, questions on your household income, questions on any previously received emergency grant funding, questions on your creative practice, and then questions on the kind of income disruption you experienced due to COVID-19. You'll then have the option to select 1, 2, or 3 of these different grant tiers to be considered for. And at the bottom of the application form, there's also a number of demographic questions. These questions are totally optional. You do not have to complete them if you do not want to. It will not negatively impact your application in any way. It's just an opportunity for the city to gather information for reporting, in which all of your names and information will stay anonymous. They'll just be generalized. These are kind of the more specific things to keep in mind and prepare for. So as Rhoda was saying, we do request some uploads of documentation to confirm your eligibility. So that would be proof of address, proof of your birth date, proof of creative practice, and proof of income disruption. All of these are pretty broad. We are pretty open to receiving any form of documentation that might confirm this information. So, please feel free to upload what feels comfortable to you, but still, relevant to what is being asked. So again, if you don't want to upload your driver's license, find something else, that's semi-official, that's showing your birth date, the proof of address. It could be a bill, it could be a lease agreement, anything, again, that kind of attaches your name to your current address, being in the city of Pittsburgh. The CV or resume, again, this, can be another form of documentation too, but just trying to see that your creative practice was active both before March 3rd, 2021 and has continued to be. So anything that can kind of show us that experience. And then same with income disruption. Again, this March 3rd, 2021 date, but if you have an email or a canceled check or contract or vendor agreement, anything that kind of can help us see what that disruption was. You don't have to necessarily submit something. We had someone ask earlier, they had some different fairs and vendor opportunities canceled. We don't necessarily need to see one cancellation for every single thing that maybe was canceled, but at least one to show us and back up your explanation of what happened to you. And then we do have a couple of longer statement questions with a 300-word max limit, so not super long, but just to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about your creative practice and the activity of that, the explanation of your income disruption that occurred, and then also just a description of whether there has been any resolution to that income disruption, or if you're continuing to kind of feel the effects of that impact still today. And that kind of concludes our presentation. Again, this is the website for the application itself and kind of repeats all the information that we've just shared here. This is our email if you want to send us any questions throughout this process. And then a reminder, the deadline is June 16th at 11:59 p.m. I will maybe keep my screen up. I don't know if that's helpful for anyone, or maybe I'll stop sharing. Maybe it's not helpful. I can bring it back. How about that? I'll bring it back if people want. I can also toggle over to the city map or the application form if someone wants to ask for that. But otherwise, we will open up the floor. And and take any questions that people have. Yeah, Rachel, is your hand.
Sorry, it took a moment for me to find the mic. Well, thank you so much for all that work. It's certainly, difficult to find support for individual artists, and I appreciate the thought and the clarity. Um, the one thing I'm wondering if you have advice about is the different tiers, or if because I'd imagine just about anyone could say, well, I lost more than $3,000 due to COVID, but I'd be happy to get 500. And I'd rather 500 than zero, for instance. How do you uh, behind the scenes, like, is there a way for us to say I'm open to any amount and participate? I mean, how should we handle that?
Yeah. So that question on the application form is select them all or select as many as you want. I think that's is that multiple choice? I'm not sure. But so you can select again, we didn't want to limit it. Again, you will only if your name is pulled for one, we will pull you out from the others. But I would say if you're open to all three and just want any sort of opportunity, by all means, check all three boxes. We just gave that option mostly because I think it's confirmed, but the $500 level is at a price point low enough that I think it is not required to be claimed on tax reporting. And so we wanted to just provide that as an option if someone is just needing some support and not wanting to go through that element of the process, they could select that. But again, we wanted to be kind of self-selecting. I imagine most everyone will check all three boxes, which is totally fine. Um, so yeah, thank you.
Thank
I have to be the
Do
one
it.
who says obligatory. We are not tax experts and accountants.
Thank you, Pat. That is accurate. I do have someone else do my taxes because I'm really bad at them. But that's my thought. All right. Um, any other questions? And if you don't feel like chatting, feel free to type it in the chat box. Yes, Rachel.
Sorry, I am chatty, but now this is just me being nosy about the mobile stage that you mentioned, Patrick. Um, how how do people get to use the mobile stage? How is the city handling that? Does it have to be a city event?
So good question. A lot of times, and I am not the full expert on how it's kind of like divvied up. But my understanding is that community groups do have the opportunity to kind of rent and use the mobile the prior mobile stage. Um, and it is, like block parties or other smaller events. I know the county has their own mobile stage that is kind of available for rent as well. So I don't have all the details, but we can dig into it a little bit further.
Thank you, Mars. I see your question in there. Yes, in terms of household income, you would claim for the full household. There is a follow-up question. So in the application, it's both, to let us know within this range, what is your household income, and then how many members make up your household. So that will kind of help us confirm where it falls within that sort of poverty line, which I think we have listed the ranges at the like 185 or like a slightly higher percentile, which is typically used for benefits and other sort of household income data gathering. So um, I hope that helped. Awesome. All right. And then Aureen, thank you so much. Let me just read this. Wondering what types of receipts. So, I mean, I think this is where and again, I welcome anyone else to jump in on this from the team. Um, I think if you have documentation again of that postponement, that shows that you had this planned gig, you had this like money that you were anticipating in incoming at a time that was then delayed. And there is that sort of longer statement, that 300-word question about whether it's been remedied or continued. I think that is a great place for you to kind of maybe explain, like, this was postponed as it says in this email or in this contract amendment. So it did happen, but it delayed my payment, or, kind of like reduced the income I was anticipating for this year. Patrick, I see any follow up?
Yeah, that it's certainly, the postponement definitely had an economic impact on you at that time, and that's really something that we are really honing in on. Just because you still had to figure out what to do during the time when your project was postponed. So yes, that is something, as long as you can kind of give us a little bit of a documentation and explanation. Um, that's really what the point is to kind of help with. We all experience the economic impacts in different ways. So we do want to be mindful of everyone's different lived experiences, though.
I've got a question kind of on that note. So largely the economic disruption I experienced was related to food service and not being able to get work in that manner. Do you think it's worth applying down this grant? I didn't have a show canceled per se, but definitely lost a lot of money because I wasn't able to work in that capacity. Um, would you say this is a good fit? I'm just trying to suss that out.
Yeah. Patrick, I might let you answer that one just to see how it aligns with the city's goals.
Yeah, I think as long as you're able to kind of show that there was some hardship of some sort, and as long as you're able to relay that back to your creative practice, yes.
There was plenty of hardship to go around. Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, offering a little space. Yes, I was wondering. Okay. All right, thank you, Lavender. Sorry, I need my glasses. Okay. I would say based on this that yes, I think that you would qualify. I mean, it sounds like, again, kind of like what we were just explaining to Izzy, is that, as long as you're able to kind of tie it back to your practice as a creative person, you definitely experienced a disruption to your business and your income. So I think if you have some documentation to show that, maybe it's a lease of a space that you had to cancel, or something, kind of explain that, then I think that would count. Patrick, any further thoughts on that?
No, I think you covered it, right? I think, um, if you're not sure, submit it, and then, the review committee will kind of look through it. And like we said, we're trying to understand everyone's situations, and be flexible within the guidelines that my lawyers say that I have to work within.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, though, is generally speaking, like, this is a pretty broadly cast net. Again, in terms of creative practice, it is wide sweeping. It's, visual arts, it's writing, it's theatrical arts, performing arts. Like, if it's creative and you're doing it actively, like, it probably counts. And same with like the disruption, there's a lot of different ways that people were impacted and struggled and were hurt by this. And so, yeah, even if it's been remedied in some way, or if you're still continuing it, our review, is intentionally objective, not subjective. So we're not really trying to split hairs about this experience versus that experience. It's just to kind of, cross the T's and dot the I's to make sure that you fit those eligibility points, that you are indeed part of the creative sector that the city and ARPA is trying to support, and that you did experience some sort of disruption due to COVID. So again, you can always ask us questions, but I think that's a great point, Patrick. It never hurts to just submit an application and then we'll kind of check it from there too. Any other questions? Again, I can give some pause in case anyone's typing.
While Hannah's pausing, I'll just add into, by all means, please share the opportunity with any of your peers. We're really excited about this. We have 2 more in-person info sessions. Like we said, this will go online. We can put up, some FAQs if we need to. We're really excited. And I think one of the things to note is the city of Pittsburgh does have to report back to Treasury, and a lot of that is just going to be kind of qualitative storytelling. We reached out to 75 artists across these disciplines. At some point we may ask, are you willing to be, named as a recipient? Are you willing to tell your story a little bit more? But until that time where we ask all recipients, it would just kind of be like big, broad strokes of, here are the types of artists, here's what we've been doing, here are the types of disruptions people had. But I do report that to Treasury, and at some point it'll be kind of part of the big compendium of what did the city do with $335 million. So recipients will get to be a part of that. And we've done some interesting, unique, big things with this. And, we hope for a lot of the cases, like support for art, that it grows into more. I know we've had really good support from Councilperson Erica Strasburger and Kahari Mosley, and they, want to keep seeing how do we keep supporting these communities. So we're excited to see where this kind of leads us as a stepping off point too. I guess that was my outro, Hannah.
That was great. I loved it. I didn't see any other questions come through, so I think we can kind of wrap. Again, if you have a follow-up question, info@caseydroege.com. Just send it our way. As Patrick said, we do have 2 more in-person info sessions. If you want to come by, we have been bringing some laptops with us. So if you want, on deck support and submitting an application and want to bring some of these documents with you, please feel free. So our next one will be Wednesday, May 28th, 5 to 7 p.m. at the Carnegie Library East End branch. East Liberty branch in the East End. Thank you. And the next one, the last one will be Friday, June 6th from 12 to 2 p.m. and that'll be at the Carnegie Library South Side branch. So come on by to those. You can register on the website. But thank you all for being here tonight. I hope this was helpful and we look forward to receiving your applications.